push that button.
Yeah, so it was good.
It started. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I got rid of him.
Okay, are we good or no?
That's not up there.
He's still in the waiting room,
Oh, okay, sorry.
Denise. Okay, now we've got everybody. Okay, who else is in the waiting room?
Amy and Stephanie and Brian.
And no other commissioners?
Nope, not yet. Oh, wait, 14 people are waiting. Here, I'll admit all.
There we go. Now we got quite a few people.
But not everybody needs to be in, so.
Stephanie, you're gonna have to mute yours. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see. I've got Vaughn. I've got.
I'm putting people in the waiting room,
Good morning.
but I don't want them all up here.
Okay, everybody. Can everybody hear us here in the chambers?
I can hear you.
Okay, I got Ron. Looks like Commissioner Hartung, you got us? Can you hear us? Vaughn? Is connecting.
Unmute yourself at the bottom of the left-hand screen.
It says he's connecting to audio, so he's connecting in. Director Swallow, can you hear us this morning?
I can.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Delgado, you got us?
I'm here.
All right. All right. Neoma, are you on the line? Okay, so Vaughn may have to jump out. Vaughn, can you hear us or no?
I can, yeah, and I got you now.
Okay, good. All right. All right, good morning, everybody. It is 9 a.m. or a little bit after, and we're going to call to order the regular meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County. It is May 22nd. It is 9:03, and with that, we will go to a roll call. So, Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Certainly. Oscar Delgado.
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here.
Von Hartung.
Here.
Neoma Jardin. No Neoma. Bob Lucy.
Here.
Bill Thomas. Dale Ferguson.
Here.
Christina Swallow. Christina?
We can.
Right here.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right. So with that, we will put everybody on mute for a second. We were going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. I know we're still trying to get used to this very much digital way of meeting and what we're doing here in these new pandemic times. For all those out in the digital space or via joining us via Zoom, myself and the executive director are here, and we're, as you can see, socially distanced and more than 6 feet apart, and that is all that's in the chambers with us currently this morning. So right now, we do have a special presentation this morning. We are joined by Enos Han from the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, in regarding to the 2019 RTC MPO certification review. So, Enos, can you hear us?
Right, there you go. I wasn't able to unmute myself there for a second. I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you now. Thank you. Go ahead. The floor is yours, sir.
All right, let me try to share the screen here. Is that popping up for everybody here?
Yeah, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right, so good morning, everyone. My name is Enos Han. I'm with the Federal Highway Administration, and I'm going to be talking about the Federal Certification Review for RTC Washoe. So for those that aren't familiar with Federal Certification Review, just a brief overview. So it's a federally required review jointly by FTA and FHWA. It's conducted once every 4 years for MPOs with areas for populations over 200,000, also known as Transportation Management Areas or TMAs. So the review focuses on compliance with federal regulations and the conduct of the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process. So that's something I kind of want to point out and stress is RTC Washoe does a lot of other, has a lot of other roles beyond the MPO, but for the purposes of this certification review is just encompassing just the MPO process and the policies and things of that nature for the MPO, nothing outside of that. So what is the outcome of the review? So the review typically consists of 3 primary activities. So review of planning products. So what we do is we go and ask the MPO for a list of planning products, documents, agreements, studies, MOUs, bylaws, all that good stuff. And what we do is a desk audit and desk review. And while we're doing that review, we also jot down discussion topics and things that we want to talk about and site review. So what the site review is we take 2 to 3 days typically. We go to the MPO, we meet with their staff, we discuss the different topics that are of interest and things of that nature. And once that site visit is done, we prepare a report, and it's usually issued within 60 days of the review, and it summarizes the process, what we did, how we got there, the findings of the review, and also if MPO is certified, certified to corrective actions, or certified for the use of only certain construction funding categories. I also do want to stress that while this review is once every 4 years, we do take steps every year for review and approval of different items that we take to check for compliance as well. So this is just one of the other mechanisms that we use to check for compliance. So the findings can come in the form of corrective action. So those corrective actions fail to meet the requirements of transportation statute and regulations. So if you have a corrective action, you have to address it immediately within the allotted time frame, agreed upon time frame, or we cannot certify you. But what we do typically are conditional approvals when you do have a corrective action. So we'll do a conditional certification contingent upon you addressing the corrective action in a timely manner. If it's not addressed, we can't certify you. Recommendations. So recommendations are not regulatory, but they're items that the federal review team thinks the MPO can improve upon, or technical improvements, state of the practice improvements, as opposed to being solely based on regulatory requirements, like a corrective action. So we can't regulatory-wise force the MPO to do a recommendation, but we do want them to consider taking some action doing so. And commendations are noteworthy practices or best practices. The federal review team thinks the MPO has been doing well, have gone above and beyond and things of that nature for high quality work and things of that nature. So while, the review can seem somewhat negative, we're looking for things that are in compliance or things to improve on. We also like to use this platform as something that, the MPO can showcase their work and all the good things that they're doing as well. So kind of see both sides of the coin. So what are the review findings? So RTC Washoe was certified with no corrective actions and a handful of commendations, as you can see here, and a handful of recommendations, which is on the next slide. So I'm not going to go into every single commendation and recommendation. That can be found in the review report in pretty good detail. So if anybody wants to see a copy of that report, it's available. You can ask somebody at RTC Washoe, either Dan or Amy, or you can contact myself and I can provide a copy of that report. But there are certain things, a couple of things I want to point out that are here for commendations. So I think one in particular, or two in particular, so the direct connection from UPWP studies to implementation. The federal review team thought that was really unique, because how RTC Washoe has all the other roles and responsibilities, which allows them to actually tap into those resources. So you're taking the planning study that they've done using the transportation planning process and implementing it through their other resources, which we found unique and quite impressive. Studies typically, get lost in the shuffle for whatever reason and get shelved or can't get implemented. But here you can see what we call cradle to grave process happening all in one shot. So we were really impressed with that. Another thing that we wanted to point out was the public involvement process. So we were impressed with just the sheer number of public meetings and community outreach and things of that nature that RTC Washoe has been doing. So we really wanted to kind of point that out and commend them for getting the community involved, because that's a very important part of the planning process. So these are some of the recommendations that we've had. I wanted to point out the first one because it kind of sticks out. So this was actually a recommendation from the last review 4 years ago. So it's recommended that RTC Washoe continue to look into NDOT having voting responsibility within the MPO board. So this actually was a regulatory requirement when MAP 21 came out, that state transportation agencies should have voting responsibility within the MPO board. However, there are certain exceptions. After speaking to some of my colleagues across the country and some people from our headquarters, so some exceptions include, grandfathered in board responsibilities or state statute that come in conflict with it. So why we put this as a recommendation is, so through our discussions, we kind of found out that there's a state statute here that specifically states who can be on the board. So while we're still having discussions about that, we did not put this as a corrective action just because there's some conflict there with state statute. And for the most part, if there is something in conflict with federal and state statutes, we try to, depending on what it is, we try to honor the state statute for the most part. But this is something we're still working out here. And we also have to have the same conversation with Southern Nevada about the same thing. So that's a work in progress. But with that, if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to take a few.
Mr. Hahn, thank you. We appreciate you participating in the presentation. It's fantastic. And we do absolutely enjoy our continued beneficial relationship with the FHWA and your review of our region. So I'm going to ask the board, are there any questions of Mr. Hahn in regards to the MPO certification review?
I'm getting a lot of head shakes.
All right. With that, we appreciate it, Mr. Hahn, for coming and participating this morning and presenting for us. We wish you have a great Friday, and thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Next, we're on to our first item. This is our approval of the agenda. I do have a
Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Hartung.
Sorry, I apologize for interrupting you, sir. Denise, Miss Jordan can't get in. She just sent me a text.
I show that she's in.
Is she in now?
Yeah.
I I'm in via my phone, but I can't access the link.
The video
If
link?
you could just text me the login number and password, that I'll get it that way.
Okay.
All right, we will
Thank
work,
you.
we'll work on that.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I apologize.
Thank you. All right. So we're on to the approval of the agenda. We are going to make an adjustment. We will be pulling item 3.9 off of the consent agenda this morning for consideration at a later time and date. So I am looking for a motion to approve the agenda with the removal of 3.9.
So moved. Hartung.
Second, Smith.
I have a motion by Commissioner Hartung, second by Mayor Smith. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we're on to item 2, which is public comment. Public comment is limited to three minutes per person. In this time, we have asked individuals to email their public comment to rtcpubliccomment@rtcwashoe.com, or we can also receive emails. We ask that those comments be in prior to the board meeting by 4 p.m. the prior day. I did receive a public comment from Mr. Jeff Church, and I will read this into the record right now on behalf of Mr. Church. RTC should not support the 501c3-6 Reno BID / Downtown Reno Partnership DRP for 3 main reasons. 1, conserve funds in view of the fiscal tsunami. 2, the RTC requested reassessment as a protest to City Council. You can simply opt out. Do so. 3, it is inappropriate to voluntarily give free taxpayer money to an advocacy group. See U.S. Supreme Court decision under Janus and Fleck. Source, BID plan. According to NRS 271, properties exempt from assessment are limited to those owned by the federal government and public schools. Local governments may opt out to pay their fair share of assessment, but are not required to do by statute. As a property owner and a taxpayer, I object to use my tax dollars to advocate for positions I may not agree with by your agency voluntarily funding the BID DMO 501c6 advocacy organization. As Jefferson famously put it, to compel a man to furnish contributions of money for propagation of opinions which he disbelieves or abhors is sinful and tyrannical, as quoted in Janus and Pacific Gas and Electric versus Public Utility Commission of 1986. There are serious issues with the legality of the BID and ongoing litigation. As constituted, the BID is illegal. Lorton versus the City of Reno, and more litigation is likely. Providing an IRS.gov charity nonprofit web address. A 501c3 must pay dues, paying members not mandatory assessments. As common business interests, the DRP has neither dues nor members. Clearly, no common interest among the retiree condo owners, churches, vacant lots. They are being involuntarily assessed, can't vote, and can't opt out. And so opined the Nevada Department of Taxation via the AG, copy the taxation letter on request. At minimum, the Reno BID DMO is subject to the jurisdiction of the department pursuant to the Local Government Budget and Finance Act pursuant to NRS 354.474. And in view of all above, government agents should cease supporting the Reno BID DRP. That public comment will be placed on the record for Mr. Jeff Church. Madam Clerk, is there any further public comment?
No, there's not.
Okay, seeing no further public comment, we will close public comment and we'll move on to item 2.1. This is the accept the monthly summary report for technical citizens and multimodal regional impact fee advisory committees. The reports are prepared and placed in your packets. Are there any questions or any discussion on this? Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved. Hartung.
I have a motion by Commissioner Hartung.
Second, Smith.
Second by Mayor Smith. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Director, we are on to our consent agenda, Mr. Thomas.
I think it's on now, yeah. The light was not very bright. So good morning, Mr. Chairman and commission members, and the staff has presented to you the consent items. The only change we had was item 3.9. We have staff available on Zoom to answer questions if there are any on these items, but I think they're pretty straightforward, and I have nothing to specifically report on the consent items.
Okay. I'm going to ask the commissioners, is there anything any commissioners would like to have further detail on in regards to the consent agenda at this time? All right, seeing none, looking for a motion to accept the consent agenda as posted.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Mayor Smith,
Second Hartung.
second by Hartung. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, Mr. Thomas, we're on to item 4.1.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So this item is the annual report of the actions of RTC as an organization over the past year. And I'm going to ask Director Cummings to make the presentation on this item. This item is linked to item 4.2, which is the evaluation of the organization by the board. So the next, actually, the next three items are all linked, but we're going to start with the annual report and then talk about the annual evaluation of the agency by the board.
Great. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Thomas. Ms. Cummings, good morning. We can see you. Thank you for joining us via Zoom. All right, Ms. Cummings, the floor is yours. Please take us through item 4.1.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Amy Cummings with RTC. The annual report is an opportunity for us to share with the community how we are doing with our performance measures, as well as reporting back on the investments that we're making in the community so that we have a fully transparent process. We have had a number of significant accomplishments this year. The full report is in your packet. It's also available at rtcwashoe.com. But rather than me making a lengthy presentation, we have a brief video that Denise, I believe, will be able to share with you from the dais.
She needs to share it.
Unfortunately, you'll have to share that, Ms. Cummings. We can't share it from here, unfortunately. So if you'll share your screen and can do that for us.
All right.
I didn't receive the most.
Bear with me while I get that started.
Great.
We can't hear the music. Ask her if she can turn it up.
Hey, Ms. Cummings, can you turn the music, the volume up, if you could? You'll just have to envision such beautiful music playing in the background, everybody.
Whatever your favorite song is.
Yeah, just pick your favorite song. least we have visuals this time. Yeah.
You just have the music and no pictures, that might be trouble.
Might be trouble. All right, marvelous. Thank you, Ms. Cummings. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, are there any questions in regards to the annual report or the video? And as Ms. Cummings pointed out, the video can be seen at rtcwashoe.com for the annual report, the 2019 annual report. But happy to answer any questions. Are there any questions? All right. Seeing none, we will bring it back to the board. This is a motion. I'm looking for a motion to acknowledge receipt of the RTC 2019 annual report.
So moved, Hartung.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Jordan.
Second by Commissioner Vice Chair Jardin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we are on to item 4.2. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman. The next item, 4.2, consists of two specific actions we're going to ask the board to take. The first is to complete the overall agency performance review for fiscal year 2020, which is July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020. And then secondly, to temporarily suspend RTC Policy Rule 5.7, which relates to the Pay for Performance program, which historically has been linked directly to the overall agency review by the board. So I'm going to, at this point, hand it over to our Director of Administrative Services and let Angela walk you through this. But again, we're asking for two actions on the conclusion of this item to complete the overall review of the agency, and then secondly, to approve the change to Policy Rule 5.7. So Angela, if you would.
Great. Angela, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Lucy, Commissioners. Angela Wright, Director of Administrative Services for the record, and I hope that you're all doing well. I will present the beginning of this item, and then Ms. Cummings will give you a brief overview of our agency goal highlights when I'm done. So in response to the situation we're in with COVID-19 and the uncertainty of impacts on the FY fiscal year 21 revenues and fund balances, we are recommending an alternative approach to our annual pay for performance that includes a temporary suspension of salary adjustments and our pay for performance pool. The recommended alternative approach includes the following: that the agency rating would not be a factor in any salary adjustment for staff, that a potential 2.5% across the board increase for eligible employees in the place of a pay for performance pool that would have no adverse impacts, on our service or any other funds. Mr. Thomas would be authorized to apply all or a portion of the funds on or after July 1st, if and when he determines that projected revenues and fund balances are sufficient. And then, of course, as we've done since 2013, we recommend that the board rate the agency based on our FY20 goals between a 0.6 and a 1.5, with 1.5 being the highest possible. And these are our recommended alternatives, and of course, any alternatives as directed. I'll take any questions, or I don't know if you would like Amy to go over our fiscal year 20 goals.
Are there any questions from the board? All right, seeing no questions from the board. Ms. Cummings, do you want to give us a brief understanding of our fiscal goals?
Thank you. And I will read again so that you can see a brief overview of the goals. Is everyone able to see the screen?
Yep, we can see you now.
Thank you. The full description of the goals and status is in your packet. So this is a brief overview of some of those highlights. Of course, safety is always a primary focus of the RTC board, and you did approve the Vision Zero Action Plan over the last year, and we have continued to update our RTC safety plan. ADA accessibility is also a primary objective. We approved our ADA transition plan in February, and our first phase of fixed route bus stop ADA improvements is now under construction. One of our priorities is to bring as many federal dollars to our region as we can. We applied for 5 competitive discretionary grants. We're still waiting to hear back on all of them. The most recent one was submitted just this week for the Build grant, which was requesting $25 million for the Pyramid Highway next phase of construction. In terms of other projects under construction, as you're aware, Virginia Street is ahead of schedule and under budget, and we're on track to be able to finish that this year. The community is already enjoying the benefits of those wider sidewalks and other mobility improvements today. We had major accomplishments on our pavement preservation and intersection improvement projects as well. Those are on track. We were able to get the word out about our procurement opportunities through our DBE program to raise awareness. We completed several planning studies, including South Meadows and the UNR study, which we'll be bringing to you next month. And we have started our update of the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. We had multiple accomplishments in our transit program. We implemented our microtransit pilot, we implemented our UPass, and we've done some other service changes to improve our operational efficiency and customer service. You approved our update to our procurement policy, and we subsequently updated our procedures manual to match that. And in terms of facilities, the Park Lane BRT station design is completed and getting ready for construction this summer. We're going to be installing some bus shelters later this year once that order comes in, and we'll be making some improvements to our RTC Terminal Way facility as well. And I want to thank Director Swallow and INDOT for their partnership with RTC They have accelerated our #1 highway priority in the Spaghetti Bowl Express project. We're going to be seeing that construction later this year. And also strong partners in our Pyramid Highway project and have completed the 30% design and moving forward on the final design. And we'll be initiating a study to identify some specific investments to make on the Mount Rose Highway this year. And this last photo is the faces of your RTC staff as on a chilly day in November of last year. And we're all grateful for the opportunity to help serve the mobility needs of our community. And that concludes my overview of how we measured up with our goals for this past year.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Ms. Cummings. So, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Lucy. Just very briefly, I know that you all know that I haven't been in this position very long, but I did want to share with you my pride in coming into an organization that was able to pack so much into a year. I know that's because of the leadership of this board, the previous director, and also the staff that are with RTC. So I just want to share with you, I was quite impressed when I learned the depth and the volume of things that were accomplished in the last year. And I would look forward to your opinions and feedback to us about how you feel the organization did last year.
Great. Now, obviously, this is a item to temporarily suspend RTC the Personnel Rule 5.7 based on salary adjustments for pay for performance. So based upon the alternative approach for potential salary adjustments, we're looking for some direction from the board based upon the projects that have been completed, but with the understanding that there are some challenges that lie ahead fiscally for everybody. What would be, I'm going to open up to the board for discussion. What would be potential direction from any of the board?
They have to unmute themselves.
Neoma?
I didn't hear that last part.
I said, obviously the board or the staff is looking for a change either to suspend the rule to do a pay for, instead of doing pay for performance. And they are proposing the alternative approach of the potential salary adjustments as recommended for FY 2021. Is there any direction? Is there any direction from the board to change that or go in a different direction, or stick with the staff recommendation?
Neoma has her hand up.
Neoma?
So I guess my question is this a two motion, like to suspend the rule and then to modify after that? Is this a two motion process?
It can be to suspend, but usually we could do it in one motion to suspend the rule and proceed with the alternative approach for potential salary adjustments based upon the agenda item that's been drafted. So it can be in the form of one motion. I just was making sure the board didn't have any questions specifically in regards to maybe an alternative approach other than the one proposed by staff within the agenda item.
I gotcha. I'd like to hear from our new executive director on what he believes. And I know I've read the staff report, but just to get it on the record, his rationale as we move through these strange times, what his recommendation is.
Mr. Tom.
I'm glad to, Vice Chair. So the world, we talk about it every one of these meetings, and I think every day, probably all of us, when we turn on our phones or turn on our TV, know that the pandemic's changed a lot of the way business is done in every organization. From our standpoint, we are essentially a local government, but we're not the same as the two cities in Washoe County. We have different revenue sources. We do share the sales tax, which I think everybody's aware have been down significantly, and there's a lot of uncertainty about when and how and if they'll come back to the levels they were before. So that's kind of the first alarm, if you will, or thing we're really looking at to decide what we do in terms of how we handle employee performance. I think our organization, like all organizations, you reward people for good performance, and you typically do that in the form of some kind of salary adjustment. However, the world we're in today, what we're asking is for you to give us some time and authorize me, based on the judgment of how people have performed in the organization as a whole, as well as what we find out in July, because most of these revenues lag by several months, to make a decision about how best to reward the organization, but be very frugal and aware of the financial situation we are in. The other two things I would add, which I believe Stephanie will be bringing up in the budget, is that we've created a very conservative budget. We've basically eliminated or significantly reduced travel. We've also frozen the position so we can get through this very uncertain next couple of months to really know what our future holds. So that's the purpose behind this, is to do the balance between the uncertainty of our revenues and fund balances, but also not wanting to totally ignore the performance of our employees. So that was the basis for the recommendation that you're seeing this morning.
And it would be my recommendation to the board to move forward with the approach presented by the executive director, being that we are in uncertain times, and as we continue to move forward and evaluate what that looks like, even though gas taxes, we have not seen a major decline in our gas tax, we have not seen a major decline in sales tax as the executive, but we still have a lot of uncertainties in the lag time and how long the recovery will be. And I think it is the smartest play for us as a community and as an organization to be cognizant of that and try to be as conservative as possible moving forward.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hartung, Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you. You know, I've said this on virtually every single board I serve on, cash is king. And I think it's wise that we preserve our cash in this way. It's not a comment about employees. It's a comment about all the organizations that we serve on, which serve our community, and maintaining a good fiscal stance gives us the ability to be much more nimble if we need to be. If we're wrong and the economy turns around, no big deal. But if it doesn't, I mean, it's always good to have a good cash position. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to recognize that. I mean, I don't think there's anyone out there who hasn't scaled back in their own personal life. I don't know of anyone that I've talked to. Everyone's scaled back. It's just an interesting time, as you mentioned. It's a time that we have no manual for. I know we all looked on the shelf for the COVID manual and none of us could find it. So I think it's just wise that we take this position, and I think giving the executive director the authority is the best method moving forward. Thank you.
All right, would you make that in the form of a motion, sir?
So moved.
All right, do I have any other further discussion? Looking for a second.
Second, Jordan.
I was second by Vice Chair Jardin. Motion by Commissioner Hartung. I'll call for the vote. Is there any public comment? Madam Clerk, signed in? None? No. All right, seeing no public comment. Call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously with all board voting.
Is that, Mr. Chairman, does that motion include the suspension of 5.6
It does, sir.
or 5.7? I'm sorry.
It does, sir. It suspends personnel rule 5.7 and allows the executive director to approve the alternative approach.
And that was the intent of my motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, that's the way we recorded it. All right. And so for clarity, I think we've got that on the record now, and the clerk shaking her head. We're clear. Thank you. All right, we're on to item 4.3. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman Lucy. I did want to ask very quickly, jumping back to 4.2, Because it's not directly connected to any kind of salary adjustment, that number range of 0.6 to 1.5, while that's the past practice and certainly a metric the board could use to rate how the organization did last year, that response to that agency review could be anything from picking a number in that range to just giving us some feedback on whether you felt we successfully met the objectives that you set out for us. So I do think that's probably the last piece to close out 4.2 is just to put some finality to how you feel we performed last year.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Mayor Smith.
I think last year, we rated the agency at 1.5, which is the highest, because of the accomplishments they did through 2018. And I don't see any slip in what they're doing. I would recommend that we do a 1.5 again.
Okay, I have a recommendation for 1.5 by Mayor Smith. Mayor Smith, is there any further discussion by any of the other board members that would propose a different alternative? Seeing none. Mayor Smith, would you make that in the form of a motion?
Sure. I'm very excited about our staff and the work they do, so I would rate this, I'll make a motion to rate the agency as a 1.5.
Second, Delgado.
Okay, I've got a motion from Mayor Smith, a second from Commissioner Delgado in regards to rating the agency at a 1.5 for the 2019 year. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with all commissioners voting. All right, item 4, we're on to 4.3. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman Lucy. And on behalf of all the employees of RTC, thank you for that positive affirmation of all of the work they put in. This item is really not specific, but a general opportunity for kind of a first touch from the board about the issue of legal services and organizations. So what my plan is, as I look at everything we do, I want to revisit how we provide legal services. So I've been working with our Director of Legal Services, Adam, to evaluate where there's options to be perhaps more efficient or more direct or more consistent in terms of how we provide these services. So the plan would be to revisit the relationship between the Director of Legal Services and the other external contracts and operations we use with outside legal counsel. So my plan would be working with Adam. We return next month with a suggested method to move forward for the next year. But really, I just wanted to give the board an opportunity, if you wanted to, before we put anything together, to provide any specific comments. And certainly at any time between now and the next meeting, any of you can call me if you come up with ideas or thoughts that are of concern. So not necessary for something today, but I wanted to give you this opportunity.
Great, thank you. You know, as I'd like to point out, you know, this is a discussion that I've had with then Director Gibson now, and then now Director Thomas, in regards to our legal services. Our legal services are far and wide. Quite often, everything that we do are either bound by contracts or grants or litigation or some type of judicial review we need to participate in, and we do that on all levels, from the Ninth Circuit Appeals Court to the federal government, all the way down to the local jurisdictions in the Second Judicial Court. So with that type of representation, and being that we have now in-house legal counsel, I think it's prudent that we evaluate the way we move forward. And I think now more than ever, being that we are trying to conserve our dollars, to really reevaluate what our legal contracts are out there, and consolidate to the best of our ability to make it as efficient as possible for the RTC and for all those involved. So I look forward to the executive director bringing back a plan with Mr. Adam Spear in regards to a potential new format for legal services for RTC. Is there any other good discussions by any other commissioners? All right, seeing none. I don't think there's necessarily a need for a motion at this time. We'll take that under advisement and you will bring that back in a future board meeting. All right, so this is item 5. We are on to our public hearing. This is 5.1. This is a discussion and recommendation to approve the resolution adopting amendment number 2 to the fiscal year 2024 Regional Transportation Improvement Program, or otherwise known as the RTIP, and self-certification for the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process. So with that, I believe Ms. Cummings is going to present.
I think either Dan or Amy, so I'll let them decide. Arm wrestle and see who gets to go.
Our planning manager, Dan Dungus, will be making this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cummings. All right, Mr. Dungus, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. I believe Denise is going to pull up a brief presentation. Denise, can you do that, or do you need me to pull that up on my end?
Dan, we're going to need you to pull that up from the, she's not going to be able to do presentations from the computer. She's out running the meeting. So if there's any presentations by any of the staff members, you're going to have to do that from your computers today.
No problem. Bear with me for just one moment here.
Perfect.
Can everyone see that?
We can see it. If you throw it in the slideshow, we'll be perfect.
Okay. There we go. So as you noticed that we have a proposed amendment to the federal fiscal year 2020-2024 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. This is actually the amendment number 2 to the program. And the reason for this proposal is we want to include the addition of 3 new projects, as well as amending a project that's already on. So those new projects, you can see in the bullets there on the slide that we are looking to include funding to expand the Flex Ride service, which is the microtransit service in the Spanish Springs and the Verdi Somerset areas. This is based on direction we received from the board in the transit workshop earlier this year. Also, we are looking to program some funding for the operation of the Virginia Line service, the BRT service up to the University of Nevada. This funding will work as kind of a seed money to start up the operations to extend that route. We are also adding what we're calling TE spot improvement number 10. And essentially this is various intersection and traffic signal improvements kind of throughout the region. I do have a more detailed list if anyone has any questions, but it's spread pretty geographically, throughout Reno Sparks and Washoe County. And then we already have the Arlington Avenue Bridge Replacement Project in the program, but we are adding surface transportation block grant funding, which is federal funding source, to the preliminary engineering. And so anytime you do add federal funds to a project, this does require an amendment to the TIP.
We'll figure it out.
So we did, per our RTC public participation plan, we noticed this proposed amendment and called for a public comment period, and that ran from May 1st to 21st. And it was advertised through our traditional media outlets as well as digitally. It was also presented to the RTC Technical Advisory Committee, and I inadvertently left off the Citizens Multimodal Advisory Committee as well. So it did go before both committees. Obviously, that brings us here today. We've had no comments to date, and since these projects are not capacity related, there is no need for an air quality analysis. So it does meet transportation conformity from a federal perspective. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Mr. Avengers. Is there any questions by any of the board members in regards to
Chairman.
Commissioner Hartung?
Thank you. I just want to thank staff for taking care of this. Can you pull us back to full screen?
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for getting Flex Ride, some type of transit into Spanish Springs. I just wanted to note, when I first asked for transit in Spanish Springs, that's what I looked like.
Okay.
So
Your comedy show is scheduled for 11 o'clock. You're way too early, bud.
So I just want staff to know, been asking for this for a while. Thank you so much. This is a much needed addition into Spanish Springs. I cannot begin to express my debt of gratitude. Thank you.
You know, the best thing about Zoom meetings is that you can mute people. All right, Madam Clerk, do we have any public input?
No, we do not.
Seeing no public input, we'll look.
I'm sorry.
Chair?
Madam Vice Chair, I'm sorry.
No worries. One of the questions I had, and I know that a lot of thought and planning has gone into the areas of some of these flex route programs, but let's say you get into an area and you determine that I'll just call it, for lack of a better term, the bubble that you've defined isn't maybe hitting the areas that you thought it might. I mean, we have it's funny. We have flexibility within the Flex Ride to move those, correct?
Yeah, and I'd probably defer to Mark Maloney. I see that he's on the line, Director of Public Transportation, but I know that we've been able to make some adjustments kind of on the fly to with our existing Flex Ride service to better serve those areas. But if Mark has any additional comment, I'd defer to him.
Yes, Commissioners, that is correct. We can adjust the existing within about a 24-hour rate, and we have done that on some of our existing demonstrations. It works very well if we're trying to add a point or expand a barrier or retract a barrier for different reasons. And then the flip side is if the whole area is not performing well, as you noted, we have others in waiting that we identified. So we would probably just move those resources to the next area, obviously going through the board and the public process on that. But yes, we have the ability to be flexible, very flexible.
Okay, and then for the Somerset Verdi area, we're still shooting, I think you said, correct me if I'm wrong, you said around September?
Yes, it could go as early as September, probably as late as November. We have a change in software. Our first Flex rides were done off of a demonstration of software, and we're going to be going out to bid for new software to start up the additional 2 areas. So somewhere between September and November. We actually are bringing this back as a public hearing next month to the board, so we'll be able to get into some much better detail in that.
Okay, and then my final question is, I know I had given some names and some groups to potentially meet with to define the initial zone for the Verdi Somerset area, and I'm just following up that those meetings have or will be occurring with those community members.
Yes, our planning manager did reach out to those contacts, and we have identified a zone. Again, the nice thing about this service is the zone is very flexible. We can adjust that boundary within a day, basically. So if we find that we have missed something or we've gone where we shouldn't have, and like I said, we've already learned this on the fly of our demonstrations, we do have that ability to adjust to that quickly.
Fantastic, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any
Mr.
further?
Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Hartson.
Thank you. And that's great questions, Ms. Jordan. Those are great. Mr. Maloney, so how will we define those boundaries, especially out in Spanish Springs where there never has been any service? How will we get to those people and tell them what the boundaries are?
So that's 2 phases. One, we right now are out for public input. Obviously, we can't do it the normal way, but we have a video presentation and comments listed through our website, and we are taking comments that way. On the Spanish Springs one, we have 2 options, which is basically 2 zones, as we originally thought. And then after interviewing a lot of our current riders of the zone, there was a lot of interest in connecting the 2 zones so that people that are in the current Sparks zone can then ride up into the Spanish Springs area. Right now, the zone we identified mostly because of time and density. We go up pyramid as far as the library and around, but again, next month we'll be bringing that back to you guys and showing you the exact zone that we're proposing, and that can be adjusted based on kind of resources. But the kind of the key there is that the density and the amount of time it takes and amount of vehicles we're putting into the zone to be able to make the service effective, basically what we've learned out of the first 2 demos.
And so let me just ask a for instance question. So you go about to the library, just up the street from the library, on the west side of Pyramid, actually on the east, let's use the east side of Pyramid. There's a little Sparks development, the Centex development. Let's just say you use the library as the cutoff point. If somebody's just beyond that cutoff point, I mean, how does that boundary, is that boundary steadfast? Is it unbreakable, or is there a little bit of flex to it?
Well, the boundary itself, because it's a booking a computer, and the computer just knows black and white, so it's actually a steadfast boundary. But what we've done in the Sparks area is those areas that were just outside the boundary that might have been a generator, we actually add a destination and a pickup point. So it's not actually in the boundary, but everyone can book to it, and it takes people to that point. So we can add those all around the Spanish Springs area as those pop up.
And Mark, forgive my ignorance. I mean, I'm not, FlexRide is it's so new. You know, I guess I don't understand exactly how the parameters work, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it's an eloquent solution, especially out in places, Somerset, as Ms. Jarden mentioned, and Spanish Springs and points beyond. I think ultimately this might end up being our preferred mode of transit as we move into, you know, this next decade. So I really appreciate staff's forward thinking and the way that this is all transpiring. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Smith. Mayor Smith.
You know, to your questions, Vaughn, we had our Sparks update from the RTC just the other day, and I was very pleased with the routes that they added in Sparks. So they're going back up to the hospital with the full-size buses and the new routes out to Spanish Springs. So it's a start, and it's a good start. Very happy with it.
Great. All right. All right, seeing no further discussion by any of the board members at this time, and we have no public input on this, I'm looking for a recommendation to approve the resolution adopting amendment number 2.
So moved, Hartung.
Second, Smith.
I have a motion by Commissioner Hartung, second by Mayor Smith. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're on to item 5.2. This is our second public hearing. This is our discussion and recommendation to approve the fiscal year 2021 RTC final budget. And I believe we have Ms. Stephanie Haddock to present for us.
Yes, good morning. I'm getting. Turn it off. That should work.
We have Jimi Hendrix on our board.
Okay, Stephanie, now use the microphone.
I can use this microphone?
Yeah, use the microphone.
This phone? Everybody can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Can everybody hear her?
Yeah? Can everybody out there hear me?
Will you ask Bill?
Can you all hear Stephanie?
I can barely hear her.
Okay, talk into the mic.
I hear her a lot better when she unmutes her mic.
Okay.
No, talk loud.
How's that?
You just have to talk.
I
I
think
just
the
have to talk
challenge
really
is
loud. I
the,
have to shout into this. Is that good? Can everybody hear
Yeah,
now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry. Good morning. This is Stephanie Haddock, Director of Finance, just for the the record. I'm going to do the abridged version of the fiscal year 2021 final budget. Commissioner Chair Lucy has said that he has to end the meeting pretty soon, so forgive me for running through this very quickly. As you know, we start our budget process in February, establish our goals for the fiscal year. We've done the tentative budget. I will say that was our most optimistic form of the budget. This final budget is the most conservative, what I would call our worst case scenario, in hopes that I don't have to come back at some point in the year and do an augmentation to the budget. So here are our revenue sources. As you know, our fuel tax is our largest funding source, and for fiscal year 21, it's going to be a 3% increase and a $2.6 million or $2.6 million over fiscal year 20. That is even with a 2% decrease in gallons, and the reason we're having that increase is because of the indexing that we do every year that starts July 1st. We'll have a 1.85 cent increase in our actual gas tax. So even though I'm projecting a negative gallons, we will still have an overall increase in fuel tax for fiscal year 21. Another significant federal source of funding is our $58 million in federal funds. You know, that includes $46 million in FTA funding for public transportation, capital, and operating. Yes, that also includes the CARES Act funding that we received from the federal government. We'll be using about $15 million of the $20 million in fiscal year 21 to fund our transit operation services. And it includes $11 million in our Small Starts grant to finish out the Virginia Street project. The next revenue source is our sales tax at $29.6 million. That is a 5% decrease over fiscal year 20. So I am projecting a pretty large decrease in our sales tax, but not so significant that I don't anticipate that the economy may recover by the end of the year. The rest of those revenue sources I think you're all familiar with. It's a $208 million total revenue budget. Here are our total expenditures, $236 million, most of that in our road projects, $111 million towards road projects, capacity improvements at $35.6 million, and preservation at $75 million. Our RTC ride, the operating is at $37 million for the year. That's actually a 12% increase over last year, and that's mostly because of our contractor increases, which is about 5% for the actual contract for the Keolis who runs our system, and the fact that we are still increasing our actual service hours. You have a May service change that went into effect now, and we're going to do another fall service change. The other we have almost $33 million in capital. Most of that is in buses. We're purchasing 29 new buses over the fiscal year. For access operating, that's at $12 million, and that's a 30% or $2.8 million increase over our fiscal year 20. And that's all due to, we do have a contractor increase in there as well, but most of that is due to the Flex Ride, the new microtransit services. Just so you're aware, our access contractor is the one who operates those services, so that's why that increase of 30% is there. So I just want to emphasize again, RTC received $20.8 million in FTA funding from the CARES Act. And that is what is making our budget very stable and balanced this year. It's making up for our anticipated loss in sales tax and our significant decrease in our passenger fares. Sorry, I forgot to go over that because I'm rushing through this. So yeah, our passenger fares are down 60%. In fiscal year 21, I'm actually budgeting a 40% increase in passenger fares. That's because we should see ridership come back as we go back to operating and moving into our phases and businesses operating again. And we have the micro transit starting up. So I hope that we will see some increase in our passenger fares due to that. But again, this $20.8 million is going to help us avoid any service cuts, even if our sales tax doesn't pan out the way we hope. We're going to continue offer transit service levels and boost service where needed to keep our social distancing. We're going to continue to move forward with these service upgrades that we've done in May and the ones we want to do in September. And we've been delivering meals and prescriptions to access customers, and in partnership with Washoe County Senior Services and the Food Bank. And we're purchasing all the protective equipment for our transit personnel and continued increasing in cleaning of our transit vehicles, so keeping that virus at bay. So just real quick highlighting again with the program expenditures for the street and highway budget is a total of $134 million. Again, most of that all in projects, major projects like the Spaghetti Bowl, Lemon Drive, Sky Vista, Sparks Boulevard. We're starting the design of that. That's all the congestion, $35.6 million. 39 in mobility. That's the finish of Virginia Street. They're going to be in construction for Audie Wells, Sun Valley, and some bike and pedestrian improvements on Center Street and Sierra Street. And then we're also continuing our annual preservation program at $26.5 million. And then we have debt service at $23 million. I want to emphasize that is $4 million less than we used to have. Our debt service was around $27 million, but we did 2 bond refundings, one in 2019, one in 2020. So now we're saving $4 million a year. We'll end our fiscal year 21 ending fund balance of $57.5 million. That's net of our debt service reserves because we have to keep those in place always. But we are moving all that into fiscal year 22 budget because our road projects never cover just one budget year. They always are multi-year projects, especially the large ones like Audie Wells, Sun Valley, and Sparks Boulevard. So we have to move some of that money to continue those projects into construction. Here's the public transportation program really quickly, starting with a beginning fund balance of $15 million, total revenues of $80 million. I've already gone through most of that. I just, again, emphasizing the operating costs at $37 million is 12% over last year. And as I said, the capital costs at $33 million, most of that in buses. We do have a little bit of facility improvements. And we are purchasing bus stop shelters and additional amenities at $2.2 million over this fiscal year. And then I just want to say we're ending our transit program with a $12.5 million ending fund balance. That puts us right at $8 million for is our minimum operating reserve. So we're just slightly above that. So again, right now, still very stable budget for our fiscal year 21 public transportation program. And then a real quick, our last program is our Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO. It's federally funded with planning, FHWA planning grants at $1.2 million. We're continuing all the programs that we normally do, the TMRPA, shared service agreement, where they help us with the consensus forecast for the RTP, and the $1.6 million in planning studies, most of that in the RTP update, advanced mobility study, Eagle Canyon improvements extension study, and then we have about $250,000 in our broadcasting messages for safety and community outreach. So to finalize, we have a balanced budget for fiscal year 21. Yes, we're moving into some uncertain future economic conditions for us to operate. We definitely are going to have some decreased revenues in fiscal year 21. We're going to have a high unemployment. Hopefully a lot of that comes back. And we're all uncertain about how well the economy will rebound. I am optimistic, and I think that we will rebound. It may be slow, but I think that it will happen. And we got to recognize that there's decreases in people's personal incomes because of the virus, mostly unemployments. So that also affects us as an economy, in that they don't go out. As you said, we're cutting back. People are cutting back and spending less. The organization is still lean. We're still at 72 employees. That's slightly up from last year. We had 70 last year. We have a couple new employees, but as Bill mentioned, we have frozen all of our positions. We have some vacant positions in our budget, but they are all frozen. And we feel our revenues are strong enough that we're not going to be asking for any layoffs or any other measures regarding personnel this year. And RTC is still a job creator. 93% of our revenues are invested in our private sector through our, we're creating those jobs through our construction projects and our consulting contracts that we put out there. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have. Sorry for the quick one.
Thank you, Ms. Haddock. No, it's good. We appreciate it. And I think the board has been through this presentation a number of times and has had a very specific discussion with you on this and very detailed discussion with you over the past couple months. So are there any questions for Ms. Haddock? Stephanie, can you stop sharing your screen?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
All right, I can see everybody again. All right. Are there any questions for Ms. Haddock on the budget? All right, seeing no questions, Madam Clerk, is there any public input on this item?
No, there's not.
All right, seeing no public input on this item, bring it back to the board for a recommendation to approve fiscal year 2021 RTC final budget.
Move to approve.
All right.
Second, Hartung.
All right, I have a motion by Mayor Smith, a second by Commissioner Hartung to approve the 2021 fiscal RTC final budget. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we are on to item 6. Mr. Thomas, this is 6.1. This is your executive director's report.
Thank you, Chairman Lucy. In the interest of time, because I know there's a hard stop today's meeting, my plan would be to send out to each of you a written version of what I verbally would go through and give you an opportunity if you want to call in and talk about any of those. So that's would be my strategy for that item.
Are there any highlights that you'd like to point out today that you want to make sure, just right now, so we can get on the public record for anybody out there that you may want to put on there?
I think probably the biggest one would be the upcoming RTP Economic Recovery and Development Forum, which is going to include Mike Kazmierski from EDOT, Ann Silver from Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce, and Jennifer Cunningham from RSCVA. This is an important part of the development of the RTP to look at the economy and the consequences of our investment in impacting the economy. All of the board members are invited and encouraged to participate, but you will need to let us know beforehand so we can make sure you're logged into that. That would be the one I think that would be most important. There's a lot of important things here, but I think that one jumps out at me.
Okay, great. All right, seeing nothing.
So one other one that's very important is I want to make sure that we publicly recognize Warren Call in our engineering division, who is at his 20th anniversary working with RTC today.
Oh, well, congratulations, Warren. We appreciate you spending 20 years of your life working with us and dedicating your time to the Washoe RTC. So a warm congratulations to Warren and his continued tenure here at RTC. All right, with that, we will go on to item 6.2, the federal report. We do have Congressman John Porter with us today. Mr. Porter, do you want to provide us a quick federal report today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to everyone of my friends in Nevada. I miss seeing you in person. Chairman, I appreciate you asking. I'd like to just do a quick summary because I know this is this particular item is being handled by the backup material. I just wanted to update you on the meetings that we've had, thanks to your involvement and as Mayor Smith's been involved, Councilwoman Jordan, and of course Commissioner Hartung and Mr. Thomas. As you know, the governor had asked me to be on a task force to look at ways that the state could be helping local governments. And we had really two major meetings in Northern Nevada. We had close to 80 or more public servants on two different occasions. And thank you to all those that are on the webinar for being there. Our goal was to provide information to the governor, and I won't get into all the research because some of this has already been forwarded to the governor. The initial meeting, which was on April 23rd, we were in the midst of this keeping everyone alive situation, and what did the cities, the counties, the local communities need? So we walked through that with the governor on the subcommittee that I serve on. The follow-up then was on May 5th. And again, thank you for being in attendance, where we walked through the possibility of a major infrastructure, which of course infrastructure is transportation to broadband, to waterways, to water systems. We really do anticipate that there will be a fairly major infrastructure bill. It appears that that movement is happening both in the Senate and the House and with the White House. So our goal via the governor's office and GOAD was to make sure that we looked at projects of regional significance. As we're entering into providing this information, it's quite likely that if this particular bill passes towards the end of June, those monies will likely could go directly to the state again. And that's why our friends at NDOT are so important and their involvement. As I'm sure as elected officials, you understand, many times it's easier to give money to the states than to the individual cities and counties. So we've been encouraging local governments across Nevada and specifically northwestern Nevada to come together with the regional projects of regional significance. Each entity has their own priorities, which is presented today on your agenda of your priorities. But I think paramount right now is that we work together as a region. And I know Chairman and again, the members of this the board have worked closely as a regional organization. And I do think that the RTC will become the major leader moving forward. Again, each entity has their own projects, but I encourage that to all the local governments that you, as you're looking at your priorities, look at those things that are of regional significance. We want to be at the table as this language is being drafted. So again, just another quick update. Again, your priorities are really well addressed. One of the biggest changes in our country, in its legislative body of U.S. Congress, really was the act of a week ago when the House of Representatives have chosen to use proxy votes. Now, this is not partisan. I don't care if the Democrats are in charge or Republicans in charge, but when it comes to a proxy vote, it's a real serious challenge to our traditional voting systems. Instead of and you know, I'm seldom critical of the body, but I am critical of the body of the House right now. I think the choice is putting actually 10 votes for every one person that shows up. So if let's say that Mark's not able to make it, although I know Mark will, but let's say Mark is able to make it or not able to make it, he could technically have 10 votes or 9 other votes from his friends. What does that mean in an equation? It means technically 22 members of Congress times 10 is 220 votes. And I just think that one of the most historic votes that I don't think is getting the attention. Of course, the House passed a $3.3 trillion bill last week or maybe it's this week, I'm losing track of time. It's dead on arrival, but there's a lot of portions that are important. So again, Chairman, thank you for letting me talk a little bit about the infrastructure forum and happy to answer any other questions. But again, your staff have put together a list of priorities and I think those will be addressed here in a moment.
Thank you very much. Chair Lucy had to leave the meeting. Thank you very much, Congressman Porter, for that update and providing us those details. You certainly have your finger on the pulse of what's going on in DC, and I appreciate these updates because we don't always know what's happening, and sometimes it can appear like a lot of nothing is happening, but we also recognize that the sausage is being made, and we appreciate you being in the kitchen while it's being made. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you, Congressman Porter, your staff. I mean, you've just assembled, as always, even though it changes periodically, you've assembled an impeccable group. They just keep us so apprised of everything that's going on with the constant updates. You yourself have been in constant contact with us. And I really appreciate the interaction and the great service that we're getting from you. I can't imagine a different relationship. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. But if I may, just take a moment. You have a dynamic team of lobbyists and consultants helping you. You know, Anya is a big part of the team at RTC, and Jane, and of course, Amy and the team. You have a solid team of folks looking after you. Thank you for the kind words, but I'm just happy to be at the Embassy of Nevada, although 2,500 miles away. But you're very kind with your words, but it's a team effort. So thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. Do any other commissioners have any comments on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, we do not.
Thank you very much. That doesn't require an action. We will move on to item 6.3, our NDOT update. Director Swallow.
Good morning. I have a presentation, so I'm going to share my screen real quick. All right. Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure to be discussing and having the Zoom meeting, be able to see everybody. So yeah, I'm going to get started real quick because I know that we were working on trying to keep the meeting short. As I do every time, I'm going to start with safety. And you can see that numbers are still tracking lower than what they were last year. This is new in March, and January and February were higher than last year, but March we dropped to lower than last year, and we continued in April. You can see though that we're only one fatality less than we were last year. In fact, in March, while fatalities were almost half of the comparable fatalities in March last year, in April, they were actually higher. This last April, so last month, fatalities were higher than they were in April of last year. And that's despite the fact that there was a 60% reduction in crashes overall during the month of April. Unfortunately, the crashes that we're seeing are much more severe than what is typical. Pedestrian fatalities are continuing to track lower than last year. And motorcyclist fatalities are also down, as well as bicyclist fatalities. So there is some good news, but occupant fatalities are up by 23%. Unrestrained fatalities are up by 6%. And you may recall last year, the unrestrained fatality number tracked lower than previous years the entire year. That is now changing and could be a result of decisions folks are making while they're driving, using our roads while the volumes are down. In fact, speed is a factor in many of the crashes over the last month. NHP is saying that they're seeing unprecedented speeds across the state. I wanted to start giving you some stories of the crashes. And so this one happened in late April in Reno. 2 people died in a single car collision off of Mount Rose Highway. The silver Mustang was at a red light at Wedge Parkway behind another car. When the light went green, both cars accelerated. NHP reports that both vehicles then reached speeds of 25 to 30 miles an hour, higher than the posted speed limit. Due to human error shifting gears, the Mustang entered a broadside skid, hit a curb, and flipped over into a tree. Both the driver and the passenger lost their lives in that collision. So we remind everybody that we need to be at home as much as possible. But if we do need to leave, to drive safely on the road to limit the burden on our healthcare providers and first responders so that they can focus on responding to coronavirus. A positive note on safety though, and I want to end on a positive on safety whenever I can, is that Nevada was recently commended by Federal Highways for meeting our previously set traffic safety targets. The state is required to set targets for 5-year averages for fatalities, fatality rate, serious injuries, serious injury rate, and non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Nevada met all 5 of the traffic safety targets for the 2014-2018 period. We are going to continue to work to getting to 0, but at least we can acknowledge the work that we're doing and the positive benefits it's having along the way. I just wanted to talk also a little bit about COVID. I mentioned briefly in the safety report that volumes are down, and they have been down. When on our last meeting, though, I mentioned that they were continuing to slowly tick down, even though we were about a month into the pandemic. Since that timeframe, we've not only entered into phase 1, where more businesses started to open, but we've also started to see the traffic volumes increase. Not substantially, but they are starting to increase, which is a good sign when you're looking at agencies such as ours in the RTC Washoe, where our funding comes from fuel tax sales. So we have been working to take advantage of the lower volumes on the road and have been working to expand hours for construction on some projects and permits when possible. And so some of these savings are primarily in time and reducing impact to the traveling public. And I just wanted to give you a couple of examples. So We've been performing pothole repair on US 395 in the North Valleys during the day instead of at night, which is safer and easier to do. We're getting a temporary permit for a business owner. We were able to get a business owner on State Route 445 Pyramid Way a permit so that they could replace their business sign during daytime hours instead of at night work. We're looking at lane closures on North McCarran at 395 to help with an RTC project. And our maintenance division has been doing mainline striping and sweeping on I-80 during the weekdays. So those are just some examples, but what we're trying to do is make sure that we use this time to keep our crews safe, do the work that we can to minimize impact to the traveling public, and really continue to keep our program going. Last month, there was also a question about the PAR Dandini Bridge project, and so I thought I would include an update in the report today. And so, as you know, in April, we approved the project for construction at our board meeting. The bridge is 48 years old and will be replaced with a new, wider bridge. PAR and Dandini boulevards will also both be resurfaced directly to the sides of the bridges. And as we replace the bridge, we are working to reduce the impact that construction will have on traffic. The first closure that we will be facing is between 7 p.m. Friday, June 12th, and 5 a.m. Monday, June 15th. This is currently scheduled. If anything changes, we'll be sure to get all the notifications out, but currently 7 p.m. Friday, June 12th to 5 a.m. Monday, June 15th. Both directions of US 395 will be detoured at PAR Dandini as the old bridge is removed. Freeway drivers will be able to use the ramps to travel through the area, so you'll go up the ramp and down the other side to get back onto 395, with up to 30-minute delays expected. Motorists will be asked to avoid travel in the area if at all possible, or detour via North Virginia Street during that weekend. Construction will continue through November. US 395 lanes will be open, but the PAR Boulevard and highway ramps to and from PAR Dandini Boulevards will be closed for approximately 5 months. While the ramps are closed, emergency access onto 395 southbound will be provided to law enforcement and first responders, to include a turnaround just south of the structure for northbound mainline access. The team has been working closely with stakeholders such as the TMCC and others to keep them updated about the upcoming construction. And we're excited because this is the first phase of our North Valleys projects. It is part of the critical widening that will be starting in 2023. And so it's good that we've been able to advance this project and get this one taken care of. Some more good news is we were recently rated for the 6th year in a row as one of the top, as having some of the top bridges in the nation. American Road and Transportation Builders Association, ARTBA, recently released the analysis of the 2019 bridge inventory, which showed that only 1.3% of Nevada's bridges, but Nevada's more than 2,000 bridges, are deemed structurally deficient. That compares with a national average of 7.5%. And we are tied with Texas as the best. Last year, I think we were second best, but in the last 6 years, Texas and us have been in the top category. Now, just a reminder, structurally deficient bridges are not necessarily unsafe or dangerous, but rather they're a priority for corrective measures and sometimes may be needed, may be posted to restrict the weight of vehicles traveling across them. I wanted to give a quick update on the earthquake. So last Friday in the early morning hours, 6.4 magnitude earthquake occurred approximately 20 miles southeast of Mina. The quake caused minor pavement damage to 3 sections of road. In total, it's about 2.5 miles, separated about 5 miles between each section. They are the 2 of them, so heading south from Mina, 2 of them are minor in terms of visible pavement damage, but they've created a roller coaster type effect that creates a safety issue that we need to fix. So we didn't do emergency repairs at those 2 locations, but we will be doing permanent fix to improve them so that we don't have a safety issue long term. The 3rd location, furthest from Mina, actually experienced, you can see the roadway cracking there and the pavement replacement, experienced some significant cracking to the roadway where we had an offset road of 5 inches in the northbound lanes, 3 inches in the southbound lanes, vertical deflection. So they had to, in that section, they had to actually fully remove the asphalt for 9 feet and put new asphalt down. They also did some feathering on both sides to ensure that the road had the proper profile. Another section down, they didn't have to do that, but they did do some shaving to make sure that it was smooth for the traveling public. The road was closed most of the day. I think we reopened it at about 3. Team did a really good job to get out there, address the challenges, and get US 95 functioning again as a critical corridor between our 2 major urbanized areas. As you saw, probably the governor declared a state of emergency for this to enable us to be able to access federal funding to address the long-term permanent fixes. And then also you have requested a monthly update on SBX, and I don't believe I provided one last month, so here we go for this month, and I apologize for that. The project is progressing well. Despite the COVID-19 changes, the project does continue. Notice to proceed 1, which is the project plans, office setup, utility coordination, field surveys, and investigations. All the preliminary work has been completed, and we were able to issue notice to proceed 2 on April 29th, of this year. Notice to proceed 2 is a critical milestone in the project as it allows the design builder to proceed with the elements of design units, department reviews, and prepare plans for construction of the project. And ultimately, it allows them to start construction. We've already reviewed over 15 design submittals and reports that they've submitted. We've also received approval from the Union Pacific Railroad of the initial approval of the preliminary design for the bridge reconstruction. This is one of our biggest risk items, if you recall, is the approvals from the railroad. So it's good that we've achieved that approval. We continue to work on our project labor agreement, which will hold up the actual construction start. But we do anticipate construction starting as early as late summer of this year. And you may notice some work is going on in the medians and shoulders. The preliminary geotech work is ongoing, and some of the utility work is going. We're not sure if we're going to be able to do a big groundbreaking on it given the COVID restraints, but if we are able to, we'll keep you in the loop on that. And we are still on schedule to achieve substantial completion by November of 2022. And I believe I have one more slide. I just wanted to follow up on a couple of the questions that we had from Commissioner Lucy and Commissioner Hartung last month. We had 2 questions. The first one was regarding Mount Rose Highway, and wanted to just provide an update that we are currently designing safety improvements at both Callahan and Edmonton intersections. The Callahan improvements will be about $500,000, and the Edmonton will be $1.4 million. Both of them we're working to really improve the safety for all users, not just those on Mount Rose, but those that are accessing the side streets in those locations. And then Commissioner Hartung asked about Pyramid Highway south of Calle de la Plata. And that specific work is actually included in the scope of the Pyramid 395 connector project that we're working on together with the RTC. I don't have a timeline on when that will be addressed, but the stretch between Calle de la Plata and Egyptian is planned to be widened to 4 lanes as part of the larger project. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Director Swallow. Do any of our commissioners have any questions or comments? Just raise your hand. I can't see on my screen the little hand. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Swallow, I wanted to thank you for the proactive approach that NDOT has taken and the access to your staff and to you and how responsive you guys have all been. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm genuinely appreciative for NDOT's role in the region. You guys have been great. And this is not an easy time. So it's just a thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do any other commissioners have any questions or comments? Okay. I too wanted to give a sincere thanks. I think to Congressman Porter's comments about having kind of a regional focus on specific projects. We have always been united in needing the spaghetti bowl updated, and we appreciate that project moving forward in an expeditious manner. We'll come out of this the other side and be glad that we had charged through on getting this updated for the safety and the obviously moving commerce and people through that area a little better and certainly safer. So I want to thank you, Director Swallow, for all your work on that and always, helping us here in Washoe County to do the things that we need to get what we need done. So I value you and I thank you for that. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, we do not.
We don't need action on that. So at this time, we will move on to item 7.1, discussion and possible direction on the Keystone Avenue and McCarran Boulevard intersection. And I don't know who's leading on this. I can certainly give a kind of a context for this if you'd like.
Madam Vice Chair, we have Director Stewart available, but I do think it might be good to have you start since this is one that's near and dear to you.
Thank you. And for those that maybe aren't as familiar with where I'm talking about, oh, but there it is, right on the screen. So I know that NDOT has done a study of the entire, upper loop of North McCarran so we can better address all of those growing concerns from speed to pinch points to, safety concerns. This one here of particular note, and I know that our law enforcement has commented on the severity of the accidents that are happening in this area due to the speeds and kind of a bit of a curve and little bit of a line of sight issues, is people going northbound on Keystone cannot take a left. There's a little bit of a plastic sort of, I don't know what the official name is, barrier that prevents them from being able to turn left. So in essence, you're supposed to go out, turn right. People will go down a distance until they can make a U-turn and then they'll flip back around. Same thing happens from those coming south on that upper street, which my eyesight is so bad I can't remember the name of it. Same thing. And what's happening is this little plastic thing that's meant to be the delineator, people are just plowing over it and it's causing more accidents. They're getting stuck on it. There was a car flipped over the other day. So I'm just wondering, I know we're looking at a bigger global sort of fix, but what are we going to do to address this increasing safety issue and the fact that this temporary barrier might be causing more problems than it's solving?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I'll take it. Initially, as you know, NDOT has done some studies, some ICE studies on there as the overall corridor and trying to come up with a solution to make it safe and doing the best they can, maintaining those barriers that get hit. RTC is going to embark in a partnership with NDOT to continue with a study here, and I'm trying to open up my thing. So the entire loop will be looked at, including this intersection from both an operation as well as a safety. This is a high, as you said, corridor that is a high crash rate and the severity of accidents. So it is on our radar to look at and continue to look at. NDOT does maintain and operate McCarran, that is their highway. And then the city of Reno would be our other partner with respect to Keystone and the other side street there on Leadership Way.
Thank you, Leadership Way. That's what I couldn't quite see. So I guess my question is, as we're doing these studies and determining kind of what we're doing with the whole area, is there, and then I know that can take time and those take resources and funding, which can take even longer. Is there not something more substantial we could put rather than this plastic thingy? That seems to be like I said, I think it's causing more problems than it's helping. Is there something else we could put there?
Just taking some notes, sorry, Commissioner. Yeah, thank you for the question. We'll look into it. I can't think of anything right offhand, and obviously I need to work with the partners of both our City of Reno as well as NDOT to see if there is some other solutions in there.
Yeah.
Are there Madam Chair, are there right turn only signs posted there?
I believe there are, but because it's kind of this flimsy sort of plastic thing, people are just plowing over it. And then when they plow over it, it's causing more of an accident. And literally the day and this can't be fiscally really the greatest thing either, because they'll put it up and the same day someone will plow it down. So it just needs to be something more substantial. I'm not necessarily saying that concrete sort of slab barrier, but something with a little more meat that can keep them from just kind of plowing over the top of it. And then we're spending money to put the same flimsy plastic thing out. We just have to do a better job of that divider, I guess is my point. So, and I'll help with the City of Reno side. I'll ping, I'm sure you will as well, Brian, John Flansburgh, and see what else creatively and substantially we can do there as we're doing the bigger fix.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Jordan, if I might, Bill Thomas for the record, we will report back to you. I know the sensitivity of time. We'll plan on reporting back to you, hopefully sooner than next meeting, but for sure next meeting on what kind of short-term solutions might be available.
Thank you. Do any other commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
No, we do not.
Okay, this says it's for possible action, but I think the only action is that we've already given staff direction. I don't know that we need to take a motion on that.
We do not.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so moving on, we will now move to item 8, the Metropolitan Planning Organization federal priorities.
Thank you, Vice Chair Jordan, Bill Thomas for the record. I'm going to give a very brief presentation on this, and part of the reason is because a lot of these priorities are ones that you're familiar with. The urgency or the interest in putting it on, as you heard from Congressman Porter, is the activity at the federal level is ever evolving, and the sooner we have kind of our game plan or our importance identified and listed and presented to our delegation, the greater the chances we'll be successful in making sure whatever happens is in alignment with what we are looking for. So I just wanted to touch on a couple things under this item. Each of you has a copy of the most recent version and the really what the biggest difference is, and I'll go through a couple other things, and Amy will help me as needed. We've been told by our advisors or our consultants at the federal level that our list is really long, and sometimes if you have a long list, you may or may not get what you want because it is either too long or they may pick one at the bottom instead of one at the top. So we've reordered these to present what we've been advised to do, which is to provide the 5 top priorities so that we deal with our federal delegation from the standpoint of what's most important to us. So I wanted to go very briefly to those top 5 and then maybe touch on 1 or 2 other things and then give Amy an opportunity to jump in too. So first and foremost, with all the conversation about rescue funding or additional funding as a result of the pandemic, we are saying that the most important thing for us is that money come out through the Surface Transportation Block Grant Program. And the reason we're saying that is because I think the experience that all of us have learned from the Paycheck Protection Plan is one step is to allocate the money, but perhaps more importantly is how do you get that money out? And so we feel like whatever funds may be coming from the federal government, if we can make sure that it's a clean and already defined process, that'll be the best way for the money to be impactful in the community. So that's our number 1 priority. And that seems to be well accepted, and I'll certainly let Congressman Porter, if he wants to add anything, talk about, but well accepted from the standpoint of our federal delegation. The second one is that with the pandemic, as we've explained to you, and I think this is probably true of a lot of places that have transit, our numbers are way down. So our ridership, our revenues the metrics that would historically or typically be used to define how much money would come to us from the federal government based on the predefined need. We're very concerned that if FY20 numbers are used, that it could harm us in terms of what our true need is. So we're asking that what's called a hold harmless provision be added, which is that for fiscal years 22 and 23 at the federal level, that we use our FY19 numbers, because we think that's a better reflection of what the actual system is and what the needs are. The third item is to expand the Safe Routes to School program eligibility. I know it's been a very big thing for this board and for our community. The fourth item is to expand use of a local empowerment for accelerating projects. And that was a pilot program that explored methods, as I said on the first item, method that gets the money that comes from the federal government dispersed more quickly and more directly. And then the last item, which is one that has a direct impact, particularly if we get some more money on how quickly we can put it to use, is environmental streamlining. The last point I wanted to make about our priorities is that we are continuing from the physical improvement standpoint, which is at the back, but nonetheless very important. Spaghetti bowl improvements are our number one, and that we have included Pyramid Highway Project, the Arlington Bridge, Sparks Boulevard, and I-11 as items of highway priority for us. So I will end at that. I will make sure that all of you have this, and I talk to each of you to make sure that you're aware and understand it as we move forward on this. But I do want you to understand that it's very much an evolving process. So Amy, if you will, is there anything you wanted to add to what I presented?
I don't have anything additional. Thank you.
So, Madam Vice Chair, what we would be asking for at this time, if the board's comfortable, is just an indication of support for these priorities or some direction if there's additional things or more work you want us to do on it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Do any commissioners have any comments on this item? Okay. Saw a few folks take their microphones off mute, but I'm not seeing anything else.
Well, Madam Chair, I mean, I'll jump in just real quickly.
Okay.
Thank you. No, Mr. Thomas, I studied the priorities. I think they're well adjusted. I guess my only question would be on our other policy priorities about to fully fund the Highway Trust Fund and the Mass Transit account. And I don't know how we're defining mass transit or if we have some goals in terms of mass transit, but that's something I'd certainly like to explore. As everyone knows, the more infrastructure we put in terms of roads and access to various parts of the region through roads, it kind of makes it a little harder to deal with mass transit and moving people around. So it'd be nice to just maybe have a conversation over time. I know that this is not anything that we need to do right now, but just over time as to how we could approach that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other commissioners, any comments? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, we do not.
Okay. All right, is that enough direction for you, Director Thomas?
It is. Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair.
Okay. I don't believe we need to make a motion to that point. So with that, we will move on to item 9, legal matters. Mr. Ferguson.
Thank you, Vice Chair Jordan and commissioners. Due to the COVID pandemic, a lot of the court calendars have experienced delays and postponements, and so I haven't had a need to get everybody together for an attorney-client session one of those delays was experienced in the Bella Vista Ranch's appeal to the Nevada Supreme Court of the favorable verdict and judgment that RTC secured in the eminent domain action to acquire the property and water rights for the Southeast Connector. There had been a mandatory settlement conference scheduled for early May that could have resulted in my needing to have a attorney-client session. That has been postponed until, I believe, the first or second week of June. Assuming that it does occur in that time frame, and depending on what comes out of that proceeding, I may need to have an attorney-client session prior to the June meeting, but I probably won't know for sure until after that proceeding is over. So I will keep you posted if that becomes necessary. That's all I had.
Thank you. I appreciate that update. And yeah, just ping us if you need us to get together and do that attorney-client. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments on the legal update? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 10, public input. Do we have any general closing public input?
We do not.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 11. Do we have any member items? Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank Reno and the city of Sparks for raising the speed limit on the Southeast Connector or Veterans Parkway. I got on there the other day and set my autopilot to 50 miles an hour, forgetting that it was 55. So I immediately went to 60 miles an hour. It's nice. I've heard a lot of good comments. Thank you.
That's good. 55 is good, but we don't want anybody opening up and speeding any more than that. To Ms. Swallow's comments earlier, it's not the Audubon. Let's not get crazy. No, it is good, and I appreciate everybody. I know our city staff was out there changing the speed limit signs, and lots of people were honking, giving them the thumbs up. They appreciated that increased vote. So thank you, Commissioner Smith, for championing that increase as well. Okay, any other member items? All right, seeing none, everybody stay safe, try to stay sane, and I'll see you at the next meeting. We are adjourned.